Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fourth and School podcast. I'm back after my brief hiatus from returning back to school, but I'm excited to get the show back. So without any further ado, I'll jump right into my 2018 NFL season preview as the season starts tonight with the kickoff of the Atlanta Falcons and Philadelphia Eagles 2017 playoff game. So as the season kicks off, I'm going to go ahead and give you my playoff predictions. In the NFC, I have the Vikings, Panthers, Rams, and Giants each winning their respective divisions, with the Saints and Packers coming out in the wild card. In the AFC, I have the Chargers, Patriots, Steelers, and Texans winning their divisions, with Jacksonville and Kansas City taking a wild card spot. In the NFC, I have it down to the Vikings and Saints as the final two teams, and in the AFC, I have the Chargers and Patriots. My Super Bowl prediction, not to be a homer, but I do believe in this team. I think the Vikings can come out on top with a victory over the Chargers in Atlanta. Rookie of the Year, on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to stick with Saquon Barkley. That's kind of an easy pick. He's a star. He's already a stud. He's one of the best running backs. Really going to get to know his name right off the bat. On defense, I'm going to go with Derwin James. He slid a little bit in the draft. He was picked up 17th overall by the Chargers, and the Chargers do have a really loaded secondary already, but I think he's going to kind of step in and make a lot of plays early on. I think the potential is very high for James, especially with the help he has around him. He has one of the best pass rushing duos in the league with Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. I think they can kind of force the quarterback to throw the ball early, and that's going to allow James to kind of hover around the middle of the field and make plays. My Defensive Player of the Year, I'm going to go with Myles Garrett. It was tough between Garrett and Joey Bosa, who I just mentioned. I think Myles Garrett has the potential to be the best pass rusher in the NFL. He's already up there amongst the best, and he's coming as a true down lineman for Cleveland, whereas you got guys like Khalil Mack and Von Miller who are going to come off the edge as a linebacker. But Garrett's more of the get your nose on the ground, get after the quarterback, and I think this year he's going to have a chance to really step up. Offensive Player of the Year and MVP, I'm going to give that nod to Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers doesn't have a great team around him, that's just obvious. They're not going to have a great roster. They're probably going to struggle a lot this season, but when you have an arm talent like Aaron Rodgers at the helm, it's kind of easy to run the table, and he's going to at least keep them in potential to make a deep run in the playoffs, so he's going to get the nod, especially as a quarterback. You could also see a sleeper for MVP and a guy like David Johnson or even Ezekiel Elliott, as they don't really pose a passing threat. Neither team has weapons at receiver or tight end. I think both running backs have a chance to lead the league in rushing and put up a lot of total yards. But MVP's quarterback award, so that's why Rodgers is going to get the nod here. Since the NFL season is about to kick off, that means college football season has already begun. So I'll give you a little quick recap of the first few weeks of college football season, starting with the big games that took place last weekend with Notre Dame and Michigan, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, and then a few other of the games that starred some of the best quarterbacks in the country. Kicking things off, we'll go Notre Dame, Michigan. You guys all know I'm not a huge fan of Notre Dame. I think they're the most overrated program in all of college football. But at the same time, so was Michigan, and Notre Dame came out and absolutely manhandled them. Patterson was under pressure a lot for Michigan, didn't look great. Braylon Edwards got suspended from ESPN because of some comments he made about Michigan being trash, which he wasn't wrong for. But, I mean, you can't really say that, I guess, on a public network, which is a disappointment because it was nothing but truth. Notre Dame didn't really have a great offense, but their defense held down the fort, stopped Michigan a lot. Came down to it. Michigan just didn't have enough firepower on offense to outplay Notre Dame defense, and Notre Dame came out with a victory. That promptly sent Notre Dame high up into the top 10 of the coaches poll this week. So they'll get that shown back when they play real opponents, but they get a freebie this week with Ball State. Ole Miss was an underdog coming into playing Texas Tech in a neutral site defense because they play in the Big 12. But Ole Miss has three of the best receivers in the country. All of them are very good NFL draft prospects to watch for the next year. And their quarterback, Jordan Ta'amu, who is hard to judge because he has such great talent around him at receiver, he looked very impressive. Threw for 5 touchdowns in the opening game, and Ole Miss came out with a huge blowout victory over Texas Tech. So I mentioned Jordan Ta'amu as a great quarterback. I don't know how his game's going to translate to the NFL or if he even has any NFL expectations at this point, but that'll lead right into my segment about the quarterback class for the 2019. NFL draft. Starting things off, my number one quarterback for the class is Justin Herbert. I watched a few of his games over the past weekend. I have him listed quarterback 1. He has the highest floor of the group. He has great potential and has one of the only a quarterback of his age. His arm talent is top notch in the class. He's a good athlete, a good runner with the football. Kind of like a Marcus Mariota in that offense, which no coincidence he is from Oregon. His footwork is far above the best in the class. He knows when to run and when to give up. Very aware of the situation, knows when to slide, when to reach for the first down, when to throw the ball away. He puts his wide receivers in position to make plays. And he was kind of limited. He doesn't have a great offensive line from what I've seen so far, but he still makes do with what. The only downsides with Justin Herbert, he's a little antsy in the pocket when he's pressured. His ball security is an issue. He does turn the ball over a little bit, and his play calling has been limited at times, so he doesn't have a great chance to make plays. His coaches kind of limit what he can do. My number 2 quarterback is Drew Lock from Missouri. He has a chance to be a stud. I have him going at the end of round 1, but he just needs a lot of time to develop. I don't think he's as high as people put him at right now. A lot of people are putting him at quarterback 1. I think he has potential to be there at some point, but not in the near future. He's very impressive with a clean pocket, open, and they drop a lot of passes, so it puts a lot more pressure on him. He can't really help all that. He's great when he's under pressure. He's able to stand tall in the pocket. He's a pure pocket passer. He throws a really good deep ball, which is weird because he's not necessarily accurate underneath, but when he throws the ball deep, he kind of pinpoints it every time. He's not a freak athlete by any means, but he's athletic enough to escape the pocket and make throws on the run if he needs to. Some negatives to his game: a lot of his throws, when he misses, he's going to miss high. His throws sail on him. Especially, he throws the ball a lot late, so the ball kind of takes off and is right in the arms of the safeties. He doesn't have a strong arm, per se, but he can throw it deep. But when he tries to put velocity and zip on the ball, that's when his throws start to sail. His accuracy is going to need consistency, and my biggest knock on him is that he was just not a winner. He did play in the SEC, which is a tough conference, but he did not have very many wins. Next up, I've got Nick Fitzgerald from Mississippi State. Nobody's really talking about him as a great NFL quarterback. He dislocated or broke his ankle at the end of last season. He ended up going back to school. There's talk that he could sneak into the first round, but I have him at quarterback 3 with a high ceiling, but he definitely is not ready yet. He needs time to develop, but his ceiling is so high that I have to put him in my top 3. He's a great athlete, and I think he has the potential to be a starter in the NFL, but right now I have him as a 2nd or 3rd round pick at quarterback. So like I said, he's a great athlete or 3rd round pick at quarterback. He's a true dual threat in the offense, especially out of shotgun. He's very capable of pulling the ball and running if he needs to. He's got a quick release and good decision making, but he played a lot of loaded defenses in the SEC. I watched his games against Ole Miss, LSU, Georgia, and Texas A&M, all of which have a lot of NFL talent. He was okay in those games. He didn't stand out, but he also didn't get completely dominated. So there's goods and bads of that. He needs to limit his bad throws, though. Routes. He needs to look to throw first, not run. There are a lot of times where his first instinct is to just tuck the ball and take off. And when that happens, he takes extra hits. He needs to limit those. There are character concerns now because he's been suspended for the season. He was suspended for this season opener for Mississippi State this season. And just like Drew Lock, he's not a winner. He did play in the same conference, didn't have any big victories. He kind of fell off. Another quarterback that I'm not very high on is Jarrett Stidham from Auburn. He was a Baylor transfer. A lot of people are talking about him being a first-round pick right now. I don't see that at all. I don't like the way he plays. Seems vague, but it's just true. I don't like what I've seen so far. He's played good defenses that I've watched, UCF, Clemson, and then Georgia Southern. Higher grade right now than Nick Fitzgerald, but I think he has a very limited ceiling. He's got a higher floor, but I don't think he has the potential to be as good as Fitzgerald or Drew Lock or even Justin Herbert. He's not consistent. He's round 3 grade right now for me with a potential to get up to round 2, but I think the hype around him is going to push him into the back end of round 1. I do like Stidham's ability to put the ball in catchable places. Every ball that I've seen him throw is kind of in the vicinity of the receiver. He tears up the middle of the field. He takes what the defense gives him, and he's not afraid to attack coverage. He will throw the ball into some triple coverage, which is good, but it's also not the best. He does have active feet in the pocket. He's able to bounce around and gives him a chance to step through throws and escape the pocket if he needs to. But also with his footwork, his front foot is not great when his placement is just off. It leads to some bad throws. He steps out too far, and his throws take off and they sail. He doesn't bounce back from adversity. If he turns the ball over, he comes back and he's flustered. He can't get the ball out. He'll take a sack. He'll throw the ball away. And another sees his guy and targets him. And then the last one I'm going to preview today is Clayton Thorson from Northwestern. He's not from a big powerhouse. He's at Northwestern. A lot of people say he has a chance to be a first-round pick. I don't see that at all. I've watched 2 games. I watched him play Penn State and Wisconsin. I don't see that at all. I've watched 2 games. I watched him play Penn State and Wisconsin. I mean, of course, those 2 teams have great defenses, but you're going to face great talent in the NFL. He was not good in those games. He turns the ball over way too often, and I don't think if he's draftable, he's going to be a late day 3 type of pick. He does have good feet He does have good feet in the pocket, and he can escape when necessary, but he has no arm strength. He poses no real threat of throwing a deep ball or beating the defense over the top. Like I said, he's a turnover machine. He excels with screens and dump-offs, but that's not going to get you anywhere. And he is pressured a lot, so he can use that to his advantage. So now to get into some more prospects that aren't quarterbacks, I'll give you a little rundown of the guys that I'm excited about to watch the rest of this season. Greedy Williams, the cornerback at LSU, I think he's by far the best cornerback in the country. There's a lot to like about his game. His name is perfect. For being a defensive back. His name's Greedy. That's a first-round name to begin with. He has the potential to be a stud in the NFL. He's got incredible ball skills and great speed for a corner. He can track the ball well. He's going to be tested this year with a lot of good SEC receivers. Shows another star in the making at the position. They have rightfully earned the title of DBU with guys like Patrick Peterson, Tyrann Mathieu, Dante Jackson this last year. The list just goes on and on. LSU also has Devin White, who I love as a linebacker. He's a little bit small for the NFL, so he might play more of a weak side role. But nonetheless, he's a dominant force. He's got blazing speed. He can be a thumper in the run game. He's just a lot of fun to watch. I think his size is going to knock him a little bit, but in the end, he's just a very solid player. I think he's got a lot to look forward to in the next level. I think he's got that kind of ceiling. It's going to be interesting to watch him because he declared this April that he was going to declare, so it's not a surprise of what's to come from him. And then my kind of sleeper to watch in the draft is Colin Johnson. The receiver at Texas. He's a huge receiver. I think he's 6'6", ran a 4.40. He's a great athlete. There can make comparisons to Calvin Johnson, and I mean that's impressive. Comparisons to Calvin Johnson, and I mean that's impressive for a receiver. But he's not getting that first round hype that other guys are, especially receivers like N'Keal Harry, AJ Brown at Ole Miss, DK Metcalf also at Ole Miss. I mean, the receiving core, or the receiving class, I mean, is going to be loaded this year. It won't be quite as good as so some college football predictions. I know I'm a little late, but I'll give you my quick little college football playoff prediction. Quickly, my top 10 teams for the season are as follows from 10 to 1. Mississippi State, Miami, who's already gotten eliminated. Michigan, who's also been knocked out. Washington's already eliminated. Michigan, who's also been knocked out. Washington's already been beaten. Ohio State, Alabama, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Clemson, and Georgia. Wisconsin has a Heisman candidate in Jonathan Taylor. Everybody's starting to get to know his name. He runs behind a great offensive line. He's a great athlete at running back. I think he's by the Heisman this year. Alabama's always high up. I think Georgia's going to surpass them as the powerhouse of the SEC, and Bama's going to take a step back. Not a huge step back, but it's not their fault. I mean, Georgia's picking up a lot of big recruits the last couple of years. Washington has a good run game and a talented defense, but they don't really have the playing or the talent to match up with the East Coast powerhouses. That said, I have my college football playoff disregarding the West completely, and the four finalists being Alabama as the 4 seed, Wisconsin at the 3, Clemson and Georgia in the top 2, loaded with talent all over the field, and I expect them to dominate for quite a while in the future as well. But it's time to shift focus and look back at the NFL. The NFL season kicks off tonight. I'm recording this on Thursday. The Falcons and the Eagles kick off. Carson Wentz is not going to play, so Nick Foles and the Eagles kick off. Carson Wentz is not going to play, so Nick Foles is going to get the start yet again for the Eagles. I don't really like Nick Foles. I don't think this is going to be another year that he can show himself as an NFL quarterback. I think Atlanta is going to get after him early and often. I think they're going to rattle him a big game. I think Desmond Trufant's going to have a big game at corner. I think Atlanta, in the long run, they're just going to outplay Philadelphia, and I think they're going to beat them pretty easily, which isn't said often about the reigning Super Bowl champion, but I'm just not a fan of the Eagles roster right now, as I didn't put them in my playoff predictions at the top of the show. Some other games to look forward to this weekend: the Giants and the Jags. We got Odell Beckham and Jalen Ramsey going at it. Two of the best in the league at their positions, two of the most iconic players, two of the guys with the biggest mouths. That's not a bad thing. It's not an indictment on either guy. Both guys are passionate. I think they're both good for the league, and that's important. I think their battle is going to be the best matchup of the weekend in terms of positional matchups. I do think Ramsey has an advantage just because he's going against Eli Manning, and the Jags defensive line is going to get against Eli Manning, and the Jags defensive line is going to get after it. They have just so much talent. They're too deep at every position on the defensive line. They have Telvin Smith who can come off the edge and bring extra pressure. It's going to force Eli to throw it early. I don't know if Odell has that time to get that extra separation, but it'll be fun to watch no matter what. Another game I'm excited to watch would be the Jets and Lions on Monday night. It's not a great game. Nobody likes these two teams. It seems that there's not a lot of optimism around either squad, but the Jets are coming in with a rookie quarterback in Sam Darnold. He's making his first career start. He's the first rookie quarterback. The Jets have a great defense. I think it's underrated. They picked up Tremaine Johnson in the offseason. Jamal Adams is one of the best safeties in the league already, even though he was just drafted last season. Marcus May's not expected to play, but that Jets secondary is already, it's got pieces. They've got linebackers that's got a lot of youth. They've got Leonard Williams on the defensive line. They do like a pass rush, and I think that's going to allow Matt Stafford to come in and dice them up. He's got weapons now. He's got a run game he can at least look at, considering they picked up Kerryon Johnson in the second round of the draft. I'm very high on him. I think he's going to be their first 100-yard rusher in 4.5 years. They got LeGarrette Blount. They can pound the ball up the middle. He's got weapons outside with Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones and obviously Golden Tate. I really like what the Lions have in the offense. I think that's going to be a great game. One matchup I'm super excited to watch. And then finally, obviously, we've got the Vikings and the 49ers on Sunday. San Francisco, unfortunately, lost former Viking running back Jerick McKinnon. He tore his ACL right before the season started. It's heartbreaking news. Hurts fantasy owners, obviously, before the season started. It's heartbreaking news. Hurts fantasy owners, obviously, but McKinnon was a guy, he had to carve out a role at the Vikings. He finally earned his place. Dalvin Cook emerged. They let McKinnon walk. He signs a big contract. Then he gets hurt. And he was in an offense where he had a chance to explode. Kyle Shanahan loves using those gimmicky type backs. He did the same thing with Tevin Coleman in Atlanta. So now that San Francisco doesn't really have a running threat, they've got Matt Breida, but he hasn't taken first-team reps all preseason, so I think they're going to have to look to throw the ball. And that's tackle in his first career NFL game. And nice way to welcome him into the league is by putting him opposite Danielle Hunter and letting Danielle Hunter just pen his ears back, get after the quarterback, disrupt Jimmy Garoppolo, hopefully end his undefeated streak as a quarterback. And on the Vikings offensive side of the ball, you've got Kirk Cousins making his first start with the new team. Dalvin Cook's bouncing back from injury. Laquan Treadwell's finally emerging into the offense. He looked great in the preseason. You've got Diggs and Thielen returning, who are probably the best receiving duo in the league. It's arguable between them and a few other teams. For a big year, Kirk Cousins loves using his tight ends. They've got the offensive line's a bit of an issue, and the San Francisco does have a great front four. They've got a lot of high draft picks up there. They're trying to get after the quarterback, trying to make a new identity for that defense. I do think the Vikings have identity for that defense. I do think the Vikings have the edge. I think there's a lot more potential on that roster. There's a lot more depth, especially on the defensive side. Reuben Foster suspended for this game because of some arrests and off-field troubles he had last season. The Mackenzie Alexander might not be able to suit up. If that's the case, Mike Hughes is going to be thrown into the fire in his first game. But, you only learn with time. I think he's a great nickel option for Mike Zimmer's defense. He's also going to probably expand his role in the return game. I do think Sherrills is going to take the majority of the punts, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Hughes back there on kickoffs. Special teams, the Vikings kind of shocked me the other day when they released Ryan Quigley. He was one of the best punters in the league last year. He had a kind of a rough preseason. They let him go. They picked up a new. I'm going to act like I know his name, and they've got a rookie kicker in Daniel Carlson. So special teams is kind of a big question mark, but I think there's still optimism in the air. There's a lot of expectations coming into this season. You have to expect Kirk Cousins to play better than Case Keenum. I sure hope he does, because Case Keenum was disgusting. I don't think he's a great quarterback. But I don't know. There's a lot to be excited about, and I'm ready for the season to get underway, so we'll see how that goes. And while we're on the topic of Vikings quarterback, to the New Orleans Saints. The Saints gave up a third-round pick to bring in Bridgewater as the backup. He is on a one-year deal, so it's a little bit skeptical of if he's going to re-sign. I am happy for Teddy, though. It's great to see him finally getting an opportunity. It sucks he's going to the Saints. I wanted to see him go to a place where he has a chance to play. But it's good. You gotta feel good for a guy who hasn't played in a long time. He finally gets a chance to prove himself back after a bad injury, and we'll see how this goes. But shout out to Teddy Bridgewater. He's still better than Blake Bortles, who is a joke in its own right. I pray for the Jaguars. But yeah, that'll do it for this week's episode. I'll get back to you guys next week and we'll recap this opening week of the season and do some more college football prospects and maybe get to some fantasy notes if I got some time, but I'll see